Okay, in this video I want to go over something called linear equations, and I'm just going to give you a brief introduction. Now let's start with what a linear equation is. Basically, a linear equation is a mathematical representation, okay, of a line on the xy axis, okay? So it's a mathematical representation of a line on the xy axis, right? Now, basically it's like translating real-life data into mathematical language. Now we're going to be going over 4 different kinds of forms of the very simplest type of linear equation. That's a straight line linear equation in this class, okay? So a straight line in linear equation. There we go. Let me give you an example. Let me just draw a line through here. Let's just do this. Okay? And so there's a line that goes through. How would I write this line mathematically using mathematical language? Okay? And in order to do that, let me just get a couple of identifying points in here. Let me just identify these 2 points. We'll call this point here -1 along the x, 0 along the y. And let's call this one 0 along the x and +1 along the y. Okay, now that's our situation. Let's look at the 4 different kinds of way we can actually, 4 different forms, I should say, we can represent this straight line. Now the first form that I want you to learn is called the slope-intercept form. Let me just write all these out first for you, and then we'll go back and fill in some of this stuff, okay? So the slope-intercept form is the first one. The standard form is the second one. The third form that I want you to know is called the point-slope form. And the last form I want you to learn is called the intercept form. Now, what are the different forms of each of these equations? Let me just write them along here, okay? The slope-intercept form follows this. Let me just write it in a different color. The slope-intercept form follows the following formula. Y is equal to mx plus b, okay? The standard form, slightly different, ax plus by is equal to c. We'll cover what each of these things here mean in a second. The point-slope form follows this equation, formula rather, y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And then the intercept form is x over 1 plus y over 1 is equal to 1. Now, in order to have this make a little bit more sense, let's try to see if we can represent this line here, this equation, into each of these 4 forms. Okay, let's see if that makes any sense. Now let's get going. Now the B represents up here, this B represents where it crosses the y-axis. Y-axes. The M represents the slope. Now, where does this particular line cross the y-axis? And you can see that it crosses at 1. So let's just go ahead and fill this in. We know that y will be equal to, let's follow the m. The m would be, let me see, the difference in y over the difference in x. We go up 1 over 1. So the slope would be 1. You'd say y is equal to 1x plus 1. A lot of times you don't even need to put that 1 there because we understand that it's already there. So we've got the equation for this line over here. I'm sorry, we need to replace that b with a 1. There we go. That same equation, if we want to represent it in standard form, we just put the x and the y on the same side. So let's go ahead and subtract the x. Let's put it out in the front. So I'd say like minus 1x plus y is equal to 1. And this would be the same equation in the standard form, okay? In this equation down here, the point slope form, we would just take any point along this line and replace this y and this x, not this y or this x, because those don't have any subscripts, okay? And then we would just put in the slope as well. So let's see what that would look like. We would say y minus, let's just choose this one. So we'd say y minus 1 is equal to, we know that the slope is 1 over 1. So I'd say 1 times x minus, and again, that same, using the same point, would be 0, right? So 1 minus 0. Hope that stays on the, yep, it's staying on the page. So that would be the form in the point slope form. Now this last one's really interesting. This represents where these cross the x and the y axes. So actually it's already set up perfectly. So I would say x over, now where does it cross the x-axis? It's at -1, isn't it? So I would do that. Plus y, where does it cross the y-axis? +1, and then it's always equal to 1. So each one of these would represent this line in the different form. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about this in more videos about the different advantages for each one of these. Okay, I hope this was helpful.